Hey, welcome back to Bulletproof TV. So far, we've picked a gun as a new shooter. We've learned the fundamentals. We've gone to the range and shot it, and it's dirty. What's next?
Now it's time to clean your guns. So today we'll talk about preferred methods, different products out there to help you clean your firearm, keep it in running condition.
So stick around, we'll be right back.
All firearms in this episode have been safety checked and cleared. No ammunition is allowed on the indoor set during filming.
All right, so you spent the day at the range. When you were done, you picked up your brass, left the range, went to your local watering hole for lunch, and discussed what went right, what you need to sustain, and what went wrong, and what you'd like to improve. So that always goes down better with a few drinks, but at that point, it's time to clean guns. And we have some options and best practices to talk about for the best way to do that.
Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Say goodbye. Yeah, all clean again. Struggles like new.
We'll show you how we do it. So today we have 3 firearms that we went to the range and we're going to clean. First things first, we want to make sure that they're safe.
So some of these firearms require you to press the trigger in order to disassemble them. So you really want to make sure they're safe. The best practice for that is to remove the source of feed first and then rack around out of the chamber if there happens to be one in there. At this point, there really shouldn't, but you want to be very careful. It matters what order you do things in. So remove the source of feed, which in this case would be the magazine, and then slide your slide to the rear. If you don't do it in the right order, you run the risk of just racking another round in the chamber. And then when you drop the mag, you still have a hot gun in your hand. You press the trigger to disassemble and get an unpleasant surprise in the form of a negligent discharge.
Right. Best thing is, if you have any ammunition, put it in another room. Don't have it on the table. Like Matt said, it's easy to get the ammunition back in there while you're cycling the gun.
And in general, there should be no live ammo on your cleaning bench.
Right. So let's start with a Glock. A Glock 19 is probably one of the most common guns out there. I can see that the chamber is empty. There's nothing in the magazine well. I'm going to let this slide down. I'm going to point it in a safe direction. You have to pull the trigger. There's 2 little tabs on the side. You pull these tabs straight down while you pull the slide back 1/8 of an inch, and the slide will come right off. From there, according to the manufacturer, and this is very similar on most of the striker-fired guns from here on out. It's got a recoil spring assembly. You just depress that, take it aside, the barrel comes right out. So that's the bare bones minimum to start cleaning. You can, of course, clean the gun. The best practice right now is just to use some solvent and some oil and some Q-tips and a brush. We can also take this down all the way down to the frame, which is typically what I do. If you have the mechanical ability, it's probably the best way to do it. That's with a Glock. There's other guns out there that you have a trigger module like the P320, the 365, the Springfield Echelon, that you can take the entire fire control unit out and then you just have the bare frame, and that makes it a lot easier to clean the gun also.
So that level of disassembly is called a field strip, and most manufacturers will tell you that that's sufficient for cleaning. If you want to take it apart further, like Greg does, our automation expert here, he's mechanically inclined, so he has no problem doing a more complete disassembly. That's called a detail strip. Typically, you have to be mechanically inclined or have had an armorer's class to do that. So again, follow your manufacturer's instructions.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm going to rip this down. Why don't you go into what kind of tools and solvents and what you use?
Okay, so first and foremost, the first thing I like to do when I'm stripping a gun down is take the barrel aside. I'll dip it in some kind of solvent or a CLP, which is a cleaner lubricant protectant, and take a couple passes through the barrel and just let that soak in. This is a brass rod, so brass being softer than steel, I feel better about using a brass cleaning rod, thinking that I'm not gonna damage the inside of my barrel somehow, but you know, Murphy's Law, I'll probably find a way to do it. Also, the core of my brush is made out of a metal that's softer than steel, and I'm using nylon bristles on my brush, which won't typically disintegrate from a solvent. There's plenty of other options there, though, that people have used for years. I used one of these for years. It's a steel cleaning rod with a brush that's got a steel core and bronze bristles. So that's an option. Again, it's a matter of personal preference. So this tool is a pick scraper. Again, it's brass, so softer than steel. When I'm using this, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to damage anything. And you can use one of these combined with a patch to clean in some tight spaces. You can use Q-tips or cotton swabs to do that too, but I feel like the harder you press with those, the more likely you are to break and bend them. So this just lets you get a little bit more pressure behind your cleaning tool. I also have dental picks. The dental picks are great to get behind the extractor. The extractor is what hooks on the back of the brass, extracts the round from the chamber just prior to it being ejected out of the ejection port. So it's important that that engagement surface be clean between the extractor and the brass on your cartridge. And the dental pick is a good way to get behind there. Pipe cleaners also work well for that tight little space in there. And then we use some brushes. So all-purpose brush, nylon brush. I like the brushes that have a skinnier, narrower brush and a larger one. And then I also keep one with a little bit larger of a head for more surface area. So again, you dip your solvent or your CLP, put a little puddle on the table, dip your brush in there and scrub it clean. We have different size patch cloths we use. So this is a 223 patch I like to use for cleaning my rifle, and this one I'll use for pistols and shotguns. And once my work's done, specifically to take a look inside my barrel, I got a light just so I can see where the lands and grooves are nice and clean on the inside of my barrel. And the final tool I like to use is a bore snake. So with a bore snake, whether or not you have your pistol apart, you take this weighted aglet and drop it through from the chamber end. And you pull your bore snake through. The manufacturer says this is the equivalent of running about 1,000 patches through.
It works well. It's good to have in your range bag just in case.
Yep, and you can see here I like to put my cleaner up front, and then we have these bristles. They're integrated into the snake. And then back here you have the equivalent of 1,000 patches. So, or at least that's what the manufacturer says, but you get a lot more surface area, do a lot more cleaning in a lot shorter period of time.
So basically what I do is I use a solvent. There's a lot of different brands of solvent out there. Use whatever you like. Get a little puddle of solvent or a little cup of solvent, and I brush all the parts individually. On the trigger, on the Glock, you've got a safety tab right here. I like to make sure that the safety tab is clear and clean, that it functions, and just go through each part. You can see how fast this broke down when you know how to do it, and it's really pretty simple. I usually take either some swabs or paper towel with some solvent on it, clean all the dirt and the carbon on the inside of the frame. Takes 2 minutes. Really pretty simple. On the slide, I'll show you a little trick. I take a little piece of paper towel, wad it up, and I put it in the slide frame rails and run it through back and forth, and you'd be surprised how much crap you get out of the slide frame rails. The one thing I don't do is I don't take a spray cleaner and hose it all down. And the reason I don't do that is because you don't want to get, like Matt said before, lubricant in that firing pin channel. Lubricant doesn't dissolve, it stays gummy and gooey, and it attracts dirt. And once that gets lubricated in there and you start shooting the gun, you've got a pretty good reason to cause a failure. So you want to try and keep this nice and clean. Use a brush, use your use your Q-tips, put a very, very thin coating of oil all over everything, and then we can put it back together. Checking to make sure that all the parts seam reasonably well.
Yep, seen quite a few times where someone was firing a Glock and they got a soft primer strike. We know right away, take the firing pin out, the striker out of the firing pin channel, and it would load them with crud. So you want to be careful with that. So again, when it comes down to personal preference, as far as cleaning this channel where the rails ride inside the slide, this is where I like my scraper tool.
Yeah, that's a nice tool.
I like to put a patch cloth
He's got
in
all
there
the good expensive stuff, you can tell. I got a bunch of Q-tips and old crap.
and run it down. We'll pretend we didn't see that.
Well, this is dirty, that's why I brought this gun. What did you do with my barrel? Oh, there it is.
It's on eBay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so once we've cleaned everything, wiped it all down, you want to put some oil on it. And you don't want to overdo the oil, because what does oil do? It attracts dirt. And once you oil everything down, you've got a big thick coating of oil and you've got a lot of dirt in there, you're going to get a lot of gunk, and the gun's not going to function properly. So if you do oil the metal parts, wipe them down real good. The oil will get down in the pores of the metal, and that's all you need for right now. So we'll put this back together.
Yeah, really want to lubricate where there's metal on metal, and there's not too many places on the Glock where you have that, but you'll start to see where it wears. That's usually a good indication. So barrel hood, some spots on the outside of the barrel, nice light coat. For the rails, I'd always put a drop of oil between my finger and my thumb and just rub my fingers on the 4 rails there. And the manufacturer says specifically 1 drop between the trigger bar and the connector on this pistol is plenty of lubrication.
Right. All right, so you saw how quick and easy this goes back together. And one of the things that I did as I was putting it back together, I checked the safety devices. I checked the firing pin plunger spring, I checked the internal drop safety ledge, and I checked the trigger safety. So that's done. And we'll do a separate video really specifically on Glocks, how to take them apart, what are the tips and tricks of taking it apart, putting it back together, and what to look for. But while we're still cleaning, something a little bit different, a revolver. I know you shoot a lot of revolvers. What do you look for specifically when you clean the revolver?
So I want to make sure that the ejector rod is moving free and clear and there's no dirt underneath here to keep everything from closing up properly within tolerance. And if it doesn't close all the way, you won't be able to rotate the cylinder in once you have rounds in there. Also, underneath this top strap, underneath the top strap by the forcing cone, crud seems to accumulate up there. So that's usually where these picks come in handy. Be able to get in there and scrape all that crud out with a nice small diameter pick. And that's usually the hardest part about cleaning a revolver.
Front of the cylinder face, I usually pay a lot of attention to too. You get so much built up carbon on there that if you don't clean it and stay on top of it, sometimes when you go to put it back in, close it up, or rotate it, it binds up. But other than that,
pretty straightforward.
Yeah. All right, so next up is lubrication. And you got to take it easy with the lubrication, right? We see so many guys at these club matches that they got oil and lube dripping down their hand that's coming off the back of the slide. It's just, it's a waste of money. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah. If you're ROing one of those guys, sorry. If you're ROing one of those guys, usually the first couple rounds down range, you're getting lube spraying in the air all around you.
You got it on your safety glasses. It's a mess. But basically what I do is I just lube where the moving parts are coming together. So a couple little drops on the front of the barrel, you can just wipe it on, put your barrel back in, recoil assembly. You can put on a Glock in between the connector and the trigger bar, you can put 1 drop in there if you want to. And typically you'd want to put a drop on each one of the 4 slide rails. You can put a drop in the front where the takedown lever is, because that's where the front of the barrel hooks into also. A lot of guys do that. Other than that, that should be good to go. Put it back on. Check your function. Everything seems to work. Rack the slide, pull the trigger, listen for the reset, all good.
So, good habit to get into. Every time you disassemble and clean your weapons, once you reassemble them, conduct your function check. And another good habit is, while you're taking it apart and putting it back together, you're looking for cracks, you're feeling for burrs, you're inspecting your pistol to make sure it's still in top-notch condition.
Right. On blue steel, like a revolver, put a little oil on a rag and wipe all the outside of the blue steel down, push a patch through each one of the 6 chambers through the barrel, you know, wipe it dry, and that should pretty much keep your blue steel revolver looking good.
So keep in mind with a revolver, if you're running a 357, you can fire 38 special out of there, but if you do, and that builds up, the 38 special is a shorter cartridge. So you may have trouble if you don't keep that clean following up with a 357 Magnum round.
Yeah, yep. Make sure you get that inner lead ring out. Look for it. Make sure if you're using patches or using a piece of wadded up paper towel to clean the barrels out, excuse me, a lot of people do that. They wad up the paper towel and then they use their rod to push it all the way through. Look down and make sure it's out. Yep, use your bore snake, make sure it's out. We were shooting shotguns, trap shooting, and my sons were with me, and a guy next door to us shoots his gun, and what looks like a giant thing of confetti comes out of the barrel. And we went walking over, I'm like, dude, what the hell was that? And he says, my son was helping me clean. We were pushing wads of paper towel down the barrel, and I guess he didn't push it all the way out, the last one. Thank God it didn't blow up, but it was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I heard a tale from back in the day about a guy who was hiding money from his wife inside the barrel of his pistol and forgot it was in there, went to the range one day, burned some cash he didn't need to otherwise. So again, with the Glock, a drop of oil between your index finger and your thumb, rub it on the rails, 1 drop between the trigger bar and the connector, and then whatever's left on your finger, you can coat the outside of the barrel. Some of you may be saying to yourselves, this feels familiar. Then it's time to reassemble, conduct your function check. And we're ready for the range.
Now you're really gonna have to wash your hands.
So Sig Sauer makes a lot of popular pistols. We have a couple here in front of us here.
This is a 226. Basically, this comes apart by locking the slide back, rotating down the takedown lever, and just letting the slide off the front of the frame. And then it comes apart, you know, conventionally with the recoil spring assembly in the barrel. And that's typically what you'd want to do on a SIG to clean. Go in with your Q-tips and your rag, such as that. This is a 320, and you can see the trigger module that comes out. Basically, you just take the slide off, you rotate the takedown lever, and the module comes right out. So super easy to clean this. You know, you hose it down with some kind of a spray, re-lubricate it. This looks like one of Charlie's guns. This thing's filthy. This is George. Big shout out to our buddy Charlie, who never cleans a gun. He cleans his duty gun and his carry gun. But yeah, don't be a Charlie.
So again, this is the serialized portion of the firearm. The serial number is on here. You can swap out the frames and go from a full size to a subcompact in just a matter of minutes.
And this is the 320, which is the full size, the P365, which is the slimline compact, subcompact, has something similar. And like we said before, the Springfield Echelon has something similar too. So really good for beginners. If you want to do a deep clean on the gun every time you use it, this is definitely the way to go. So frequency of cleaning. How often do you clean your guns?
So I have a friend that told me if you want a gun to last a lifetime, clean it every time you fire it. If you want it to last 3 lifetimes, clean it every 3rd time you fire it.
Right.
So I tend to go by round count. If I take it out and fire a couple hundred rounds, I'll just run a bore snake through the barrel. But other than that, every 300 to 500 rounds, I'll clean my pistols.
Yep. If I've got a couple of 100 rounds through a gun and I'm going to go shoot a match, I'll take the top end off and I'll just do a quick duty lube on it to make sure it's got plenty of oil in it. But other than that, I do the same thing. By 400 rounds, I'm going to take it apart and really make sure it's spick and span, because the dirt and the carbon accumulate and it can lead to jams. You know, Matt, we were talking before. You brought up a good point with the type of oil you use. Find an oil that you like, no matter what it is, and don't mix and match in the gun different oils at the same time. If you're going to say, well, I don't like this brand anymore, I'm going to use this brand, that's fine. Make sure you clean the gun really well, get all that oil off. What was the experience that your department had?
Yeah, so we mixed 2 different cleaners and wound up kind of gumming up the guns, so they had to be dropped in an ultrasonic cleaner, which is probably a good segue conversation for later. But
Right.
Yep, and so you really got to be careful what you mix. I know some of the military units have regulations that prohibit you mixing cleaners.
Another thing is WD-40. You don't want to use WD-40 as a long-term cleaner. If that's all you have for the short term, it works. But I found myself that you put guns in a gun cabinet that had WD-40 on them, and it's a mess after a while. It's almost like a shellacky mess.
Yep.
Yeah.
So more so on the military side, usually you see CLPs there. That's an acronym, stands for Cleaner, Lubricant, Protectant. It's one chemical that just does everything. And so that's a pretty good one to use. Just simplifies it, cleans it, protects it. Remember, if you're using solvent, you're stripping off some of the oils. So you have to put those back on. But the CLP is a solvent as well as a lubricant. So it's one-stop shopping.
Right. Something that people forget about is magazines. If you go and shoot club matches, even if it's once a month, you're shooting 300, 400 rounds through your guns, and you've got multiple magazines. And magazines, over time, accumulate a lot of carbon and dirt and crud. If you're shooting USPSA and you're running and gunning, you're dropping these things in the dirt and the dust and the sand, they get gummed up. So what's your maintenance program on magazines?
So they're real easy to disassemble. I like to break them down all the way. But during a match in the field, you can just get in there with a mag brush and clean out the dirt and the sand and everything else that gets in there. Statistically, if you have a stoppage, it's more likely to be the ammo and the mags than it is the gun. So I like to try to stay on top of the magazines. These are real easy to disassemble.
Another thing that you have to think about is the springs, the recoil spring assembly. These are a wear item, believe it or not, and a lot of guys shoot a lot of rounds and they never change these out. You start to get battering in the gun, you start to get bad feeding. So if you're shooting every month, think about, maybe once a year, changing out your recoil spring assembly. I do it on all my Glocks that I shoot a lot.
Yeah. So we would see with the Glocks especially, the recoil spring assembly is rated for X number of rounds, but some guys shoot less, some more, and we'd have to replace them. That'll be apparent to you when you do your function check. The last piece of the function check requires you to pull the slide back, let it ride almost all the way forward, and then let it go. It should return into battery, which means your recoil spring assembly is good. But they're super easy to swap out, right? It's a one-piece unit. It's a captured spring.
Fairly inexpensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just like I only run Michelin Defenders on my cars because I know I get 90,000 miles out of them, right? But if it's a recoil spring assembly, you'll get a certain number of rounds out of it, and then that's it. Time to replace the part.
So Matt, you were talking about how to check the recoil spring assembly for good function.
Right, so during the course of a function check, let your slide go almost all the way into battery with the muzzle pointed up at a 45-degree angle. When you let it go, it should return fully into battery, and here it does. If it was stuck back here a little bit, and it wasn't fully back into battery, meaning completely forward on the frame, it'd probably be time for a new recoil spring assembly.
Recoil spring assembly, yeah. You're gonna have to wash your hands after handling that Glock so much today. I know how you are the anti-Glock man.
All right, so we've said before it's important to talk about what to do and what not to do in the firearms world. And so I can tell you for sure, I have friends that put their guns in the top rack of their dishwasher. Don't do that. It's never a good thing to
Charlie.
use. Not to name anybody, but you never want to use water like that and then not re-oil it, and unless you have your dishwasher hooked up to do re-oiling too. It's never a good practice.
That's right.
Also, taking the top of the slide off on your Glock, holding it over a garbage can and hosing it down with rem oil. It's like a snowball going downhill. It just accumulates more junk, carbon, and it just gums up that firing pin, and then you wind up with the soft primer strikes, and that becomes a lot harder to clean. So that's what not to do. But one option we can talk about is the ultrasonic cleaner, where you completely immerse your gun in an ultrasonic cleaner. It kind of vibrates the carbon and all the metallic debris off your gun. So that's a good option, provided that you're going to re-oil afterwards. So if you're going to use a water-based cleaner in an ultrasonic, I know some people use Simple Green. One of the branches in the military uses Simple Green, right? But you got to re-oil after you're done with that. Very important.
And there are some manufacturers with finishes on the guns that don't like that. So check with your manufacturer to see if ultrasonic cleaning, if you have one, is applicable.
Yeah, and we always advocate for reading the owner's manual anyway, right? But a lot of us don't. That's one thing you really want to do with a firearm, is read completely through your firearm owner's warranty and owner's instructions, right? A lot of them, you'll void your warranty if you're using leaded rounds, meaning there's no metal jacketing over the lead on the bullet. And certain other things like that. Reloads will void a lot of warranties. So you want to use factory ammo only if that's the case for you. But as far as cleaning in the ultrasonic, you just have to be careful. You have to look at your coatings and make sure you re-oil. Certain coatings you're not supposed to put in an ultrasonic cleaner either. So again, you really got to do your reading, do your homework. Sometimes you're not saving time trying to save time.
Yeah.
Trying to save time using the ultrasonic cleaner.
Yep. Hey, we also want to remember to thank our sponsor, Plumstead Arms. They've been very generous with the channel. Thank you guys. We really appreciate it.